I was talking to my pet cockroach, Danny DeVito, the other day about how sometimes life just doesn't seem real, like it's all a simulation. And he told me that maybe I should do a video about Scott Adams, and I was like, "Shut up, Danny DeVito! You don't know what you're talking about!" And then I stepped on him. But now in hindsight, I think it's a good idea, so I got myself a new pet cockroach. I'm going to call him Mike Cernovich. And oh yeah, here's my video on Scott Adams, the simulation spider.
What the? And I! Ah!
Scott Adams, full name Scott Adams Says, is a former engineer, a trained hypnotist, and an aspiring Twitter user who lives in California. He spends the majority of his time on YouTube talking about a wide variety of subjects. He'll read you snippets of news stories. He opines. It's like a 2-hour fireside chat with Franklin D. Roosevelt, only without the hair, wheelchair, or Japanese concentration camps.
Neither the Army nor the War Relocation Authority relished the idea of taking men, women, and children from their homes, so the military and civilian agencies alike determined to do the job as a democracy should.
Scott Adams Says also does some comedy skits on his YouTube Variety Hour, which are funny. Like Carol Burnett funny, but not Tim Conway funny. Yes, there is a difference, Mike Cernovich! Silence! Lately, Scott Adams Says has gotten some people on Twitter upset because he hypnotized them into taking the Vaxx. And when they started having convulsions and died of suddenly, they blamed him for hypnotizing them into taking the Vaxx, which really wasn't nice of Scott Adams Says at all to do that. I mean, using your hypnotic powers to make people die of suddenly is the sort of thing only bad people do. Or maybe people who are too high to realize what they're doing. Anyway, all of these upset people who died of suddenly will probably sue Scott Adams Says one day, as soon as they recover from dying of suddenly. But I do not want to talk about that controversy right now, Mike Cernovich! Silence! One of the things Scott Adams Says brings up constantly on his YouTube Variety Hour is his unique theory, which no one has ever really conceived of before, that we do not live in a real world, but a simulation. Like, software. And that he's a serious player at the center of that simulation, able to occasionally affect changes to it. You'll notice weird stuff like an orange blinking in and out of existence, or maybe a famous person like Elon Musk says something to him on Twitter when he was just thinking about Elon Musk, because no one ever really thinks about Elon Musk. So weird. Stuff like that. I mean, it could all just be Jungian coincidence, and Jeffrey Dahmer did write an entire album back in the early 80s with this as a theme called Synchronicity. It's pretty good, although its reggae influences can get a bit monotonous. So you definitely want to listen to it on a forever loop when you have someone trapped in your basement and want them to be mildly uncomfortable. So Scott Adams Says has a lot of reasons to think that he lives in a simulation and that he's at the center of it. I would list all of Scott Adams Says' reasons here, but instead I'm going to give you my reasons because it's my video. So here are 3 reasons Scott Adams Says lives at the center of the simulation. Number 1, the speed of light. If you're running a simulation, like for instance a massive multiplayer online game like Asteroids, you want to make sure that the participants do not overtax your computer resources and drag the simulation to a halt. So you have to build in limitations. Albert Einstein discovered back in the 1920s that the speed of light is a hard limitation that prevents simulation participants from going too fast and crashing the simulation. It also prevents participants from one day going to Alpha Centauri, because the simulation really doesn't want to put the effort into actually building Alpha Centauri. It spent a lot of money making this little blob captured here in this NASA photo. It doesn't want to go back and fill in more detail. The simulation wants you to put this picture of Alpha Centauri up on the refrigerator and admire it every morning when you get orange juice.
Oh, Stewie, it's wonderful.
This is going right up on the fridge.
Really? The fridge?
It's like we have a little Michelangelo in the house.
Okay, see you guys later.
I almost lost it when you said to put it on the...
The speed of light is a subtle limitation, so you may have missed it. But if you go outside and run as hard as you can, you'll see that you really can't break the speed of light barrier. But don't go outside just yet. Like and subscribe this video first. Do it now, in case you die of suddenly. Number 2, quantum physics. There's a famous quantum physics experiment that no one really understands, but everyone puts into their documentaries about quantum physics, like this guy who sort of looks like Scott Adams Says, but has a much better accent.
It's hard to overstate just how crazy this is.
The experiment goes like this. Shoot a photon out of this photon gun at a piece of cardboard that has 2 slits cut into it. I said slits. The photon comes out the other side as both a wave and a particle. I hope your mind is blown now. There's also this. When electrons orbit the nucleus of an atom, the height of the orbit is determined by the amount of energy or heat the atom has. The more heat, the higher the orbit. But it doesn't go smoothly up and down. It pops from one orbit to another, no transition. Like it ceases to exist in one orbit and comes back into existence in another. Freaky, right? I couldn't sleep for a week after I heard that. And then there's quantum entanglement.
Have you ever had this tooth pulled before?
Which basically says that the simulation doesn't make a complete decision upon the exact spin on 2 entangled particles until Schrodinger's cat looks at it. In other words, the simulation doesn't render anything off screen, only those items that are on screen and being observed. It may track basic stuff like location, temperature, etc. when it goes off screen, but otherwise it's not spending processing power rendering what it looks like, and all of the details. Angels and demons. As a connoisseur of Catholic exorcists on YouTube, I must say that Father Carl Ripperger is one of the best. A few things he's mentioned about his experiences give me pause about the nature of the universe. A lot of it sounds like, to me anyway, a simulation or software, though he would probably disagree. First, he talks about how demons can insert images into your brain to tempt you, and the way in which he describes the process reminds me of 2 modems from the 1990s talking to each other. There's a ping or knock, then a handshake, then an agreement to let the other modem talk to you, inserting evil images into your brain. Second, he describes how demons made their decisions to defy God aeons ago and will never change that decision even if given another chance. Like a non-player character that will always give the same decision over and over, even if every millisecond of their existence since that decision is filled with unmentionable pain and agony. Like watching Star Trek Discovery. Third, he mentions that angels have access to any knowledge that they need at any given moment. They are not omniscient, only God is omniscient. But if they have been given a mission from God and need additional information to complete it...
You see, we're on a mission from God.
Don't you blaspheme in here! Don't you blaspheme in here!
They receive that knowledge instantly. All they have to do is think about the subject in question.
You better think about what...
And they know about it instantly. Like Google, if Google were infinitely good instead of infinitely evil, and it was attached to your brain directly. Finally, he mentioned that angels don't actually have wings. That was the only way medieval painters could figure out how to depict them as being able to move instantly from point A to point B. It's not really flying. It's more like someone changing their X, Y, and Z coordinates in a simulation. As an occasional computer programmer, these Catholic data points really freak me out, if I understand them correctly. Anyway, there are other reasons to list why Scott Adams Says is at the center of the simulation, but I am not authorized to reveal them to you. If I did, you might be able to step out of the simulation and might even die of suddenly, and I don't want that on my hands. Plus, there are plenty of people out there desperate to tell you all about the simulation and how to manipulate it and manifest and be your guru. I'm not one of those people. But before I go, I feel compelled to tell you that Scott Adams Says is actually not at the center of the simulation, because he's at the center of my simulation, as are you. Because everyone is gangsta till the cockroaches fly, and I am not done punishing all of you for not subscribing to my channel yet. Get off your butt and subscribe now, or I will send my new pet cockroach, Andrew Tate, over to your house to destroy you. Destroy you all! Right into the center of the simulation!
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes a Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood. Can he swing?